For over 3 decades, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson built one of the strongest personal brands Hollywood has ever seen. He wasn't just an action star. He became a symbol of discipline, consistency, and success, the guy who wakes up before sunrise, works harder than everyone else, never complains, never loses. Whether on the wrestling stage or the movie screen, The Rock always seemed larger than life. But there's a problem with building a brand around perfection. The closer you get to perfection, the less room you have for mistakes. Because sometimes, it only takes one decision for people to start seeing you differently. In 2016, Johnson made a choice that would trigger years of public controversy. What began as an on-set disagreement inside the Fast and Furious franchise quickly became one of Hollywood's most talked about feuds. At the center of it all stood Vin Diesel, the face of the franchise, a producer with significant creative influence, and one of the few people in Hollywood who wasn't willing to step aside for The Rock. What followed wasn't just a clash between two movie stars. It became a battle over creative control, public image, and legacy, and by the time it was over, many fans were asking a question no one would have imagined years earlier. Did The Rock's biggest challenge come from Vin Diesel, or from the image he spent decades creating? Long before the feud made headlines, both men were fighting very different battles. In the mid-2000s, Dwayne Johnson's Hollywood career wasn't unfolding the way he had imagined. After leaving WWE to pursue acting full-time, he was expected to become Hollywood's next great action star. Instead, his career struggled to find a clear direction. Films like Walking Tall, Be Cool, Doom, Southland, Tales, and Gridiron Gang delivered mixed results. Some underperformed financially, while others were met with lukewarm reviews. Ironically, Johnson found his biggest successes in family-friendly movies. The Game Plan, Race to Witch Mountain, Get Smart, and Tooth Fairy all performed well at the box office. But they weren't turning him into the action hero he wanted to become. At almost the same time, the Fast and Furious franchise faced its own identity crisis. The first 3 films had earned a loyal fanbase by celebrating street racing culture. But despite that passionate audience, the franchise wasn't reaching the massive global success Universal Pictures hoped for. Everything changed with Fast and Furious in 2009. The studio began shifting away from pure street racing and toward larger action sequences, bigger stunts, and broader storytelling. The gamble paid off. The 4th film became the highest-grossing installment in the franchise at the time. And one person played a major role in that transition: Vin Diesel. Although he had stepped away from parts of the franchise early on, Diesel returned and became deeply involved behind the scenes. Through his production company, One Race Films, he gained significant creative influence over the future of the series. He wasn't simply starring in these movies anymore, he was helping shape them. According to those involved with the franchise, Diesel worked closely with writers and producers to develop long-term storylines and expand Dominic Toretto into the emotional center of the series. For Vin, Fast and Furious wasn't just another paycheck, it was his legacy. Then, in 2010, Universal made a decision that changed everything. To push the franchise even further into blockbuster territory, they brought in Dwayne Johnson. It was exactly the opportunity The Rock had been waiting for. He transformed himself physically, embraced a tougher on-screen image, and accepted the role of Luke Hobbs, a relentless federal agent determined to hunt down Dominic Toretto and his crew. The gamble worked for everyone. Fast 5 became both a critical and commercial success, earning more than $600 million worldwide and earning praise as one of the strongest entries in the franchise. Audiences loved the chemistry between Hobbs and Dom on screen. They looked like the perfect rivals behind the scenes. That rivalry may have been growing into something much more complicated. Fast 5 didn't just revive a franchise, it reinvented it. For the first time, the series was no longer defined by street racing. It had evolved into a global action franchise built around larger-than-life characters, impossible stunts, and explosive set pieces. At the center of that transformation were 2 men: Vin Diesel's Dominic Toretto and Dwayne Johnson's Luke Hobbs. Their on-screen chemistry became one of the franchise's biggest strengths. What started as a rivalry slowly evolved into mutual respect, giving audiences one of the most memorable dynamics in the series. Universal knew they had found a winning formula. Fast and Furious 6 became another major success, earning nearly $800 million worldwide and proving that Fast 5 wasn't just a lucky break. Then came Furious 7 originally developed alongside the sixth film. The story had grown so ambitious that it was split into two separate movies. According to Vin Diesel, there was simply too much story to fit into a single film. When Furious 7 finally premiered in 2015, it became a global phenomenon. Driven by emotional tributes to Paul Walker and the franchise's ever-expanding scale, the film grossed more than $1.5 billion worldwide becoming the highest-grossing movie in the series. But while the franchise reached new heights, the careers of its two biggest stars were heading in very different directions. Outside of Fast and Furious Dwayne Johnson was becoming one of Hollywood's most bankable actors. Films like Journey to G.I. Joe, Retaliation Hercules and San Andreas continued to perform well at the global box office. His schedule became packed. His brand kept growing, and with every successful project, his influence inside Hollywood grew even stronger. Vin Diesel's career told a different story. Outside of Fast and Furious several of his projects struggled to match the same level of success. While XXX, Return of Xander Cage performed respectably, films like Babylon AD, The Last Witch Hunter and later entries in The Chronicles of Riddick received mixed reviews or disappointed commercially. That didn't make Diesel any less powerful inside the franchise. If anything, it made Fast and Furious even more important to him. For Johnson, the franchise had become one chapter in an increasingly successful career for Diesel. It was the foundation of everything he had built. Two stars, two different priorities, two very different ideas about leadership, and eventually, those differences became impossible to hide. In August 2016, everything changed with a single Instagram post, a post that would ignite one of Hollywood's most public behind-the-scenes conflicts. By the summer of 2016, The Fate of the Furious was still in production. From the outside, everything looked normal. Inside the set, however, reports suggested that tensions had been building for months. Then, on August 8th, Dwayne Johnson did something almost no major Hollywood star ever does while promoting a blockbuster. He took the conflict public. In a now-deleted Instagram post, Johnson praised the film's crew and his female co-stars. But when he turned his attention to some of his male co-stars, his tone changed completely. Without mentioning anyone by name, he wrote that while some men carried themselves like true professionals, others didn't. He even described them as candy asses adding that viewers would be able to see his genuine frustration on screen because his blood was legit boiling. The internet exploded. Almost immediately, fans and media outlets began trying to identify who Johnson was talking about. Within days, multiple reports pointed to one name, Vin Diesel. According to several media reports at the time, sources connected to the production claimed the two stars had repeatedly disagreed over creative decisions and leadership on set. Some reports alleged that Johnson was frustrated with Diesel's approach to production. Others claimed the exact opposite, that Diesel believed Johnson's growing Hollywood status had made collaboration increasingly difficult. Neither version could be independently confirmed. But one thing was undeniable: the story had taken on a life of its own. Entertainment outlets covered every new rumor. Anonymous sources appeared almost daily. Fans began choosing sides. What may have started as a disagreement behind closed doors had now become a public spectacle. The following day, according to multiple reports, Johnson and Diesel met privately on set in an attempt to resolve their differences. A few days later, Johnson posted another message on Instagram. This time, his tone was noticeably calmer. He spoke about teamwork, respect, and the idea that even families experience conflict. He suggested that disagreement could lead to growth if it was handled the right way. It sounded like the controversy might finally be over, but once the cameras stopped rolling, the silence between the two actors only fueled more speculation. And when The Fate of the Furious premiered months later, fans noticed something unusual. Despite being two of the franchise's biggest stars, The Rock and Vin Diesel shared remarkably little screen time together. It didn't feel accidental. Later, Johnson confirmed what many viewers had already suspected. The two actors had not filmed some of their scenes together. Whatever happened behind the scenes, it clearly hadn't been resolved. For months, Vin Diesel said almost nothing publicly. While headlines continued to speculate about the feud, he largely stayed silent. Then, in April 2017, he finally addressed the situation during an interview with USA Today. At first, his comments sounded surprisingly diplomatic. Diesel said he didn't believe the conflict was as dramatic as people had made it out to be. He praised Johnson's contributions to the franchise and spoke about the responsibility he carried as both an actor and a producer. He even suggested that any tension on set came from his desire to protect the franchise and push everyone, including Johnson, to deliver the strongest performance possible. Then came the line that caught everyone's attention. Referring to their relationship, Diesel said, Dwayne only has one big brother in this film world, and that's me. To some fans, it sounded affectionate. To others, it came across as patronizing. Whether Diesel intended it that way or not, the remark immediately became one of the defining moments of the feud. It shifted the conversation away from scheduling conflicts or creative disagreements, and towards something much deeper: pride, status, and respect. Johnson didn't immediately respond, but his silence didn't mean the issue was settled. Around this time, it also became increasingly clear that Johnson was stepping away from the main Fast and Furious storyline. Instead, he focused on Hobbs and Shaw a spin-off starring himself and Jason Statham. Released in 2019, the film became another commercial success, earning more than $760 million worldwide. Without the larger ensemble cast, audiences finally had the chance to see Hobbs take center stage. But even as the spin-off succeeded, another story began attracting attention. According to a report from The Wall Street Journal, both Johnson and Diesel reportedly had contractual provisions designed to limit how their characters could be portrayed during fight scenes. Producer Michael Fottrell later confirmed that action sequences were carefully choreographed in advance to ensure they remained balanced. Additional reports claimed that, during one scene in The Fate of the Furious Johnson requested a small change so his character would end a fight sitting upright rather than lying flat on the ground. None of these reports proved who was right or wrong, but together they reinforced a growing public perception that behind the action, behind the explosions, and behind the talk of family, two of Hollywood's biggest stars were also protecting something else: their image. And that perception would only grow stronger after Vin Diesel made another set of comments that Johnson found impossible to ignore. By 2021, the feud had lasted nearly 5 years. Neither man had fully walked it back. Then Vin Diesel reignited the conversation during an interview with Men's Health Speaking about Johnson's performance as Luke Hobbs, Diesel said he had used what he described as tough love to help bring the character to life. As both an actor and a producer, he explained that his responsibility was to push performances to where they needed to be. On the surface, it sounded like a compliment, but many interpreted it differently. To some, it sounded as though Diesel was taking partial credit for one of Johnson's most celebrated roles. Johnson wasn't impressed. In an interview with Vanity Fair he dismissed the comments, saying he had no interest in giving them any more attention than they deserved. Then, for the first time, he reflected openly on the Instagram post that had started everything. Johnson admitted it wasn't his best moment. He said taking the disagreement public went against his own principles and acknowledged that the issue should have been handled privately. But while he regretted the way he expressed his frustration, he never withdrew the reason behind it. According to Johnson, he and Diesel simply approached filmmaking in fundamentally different ways. Different philosophies, different leadership styles, different ways of working, and in his view, those differences were never truly resolved. Johnson also responded to Diesel's earlier Big Brother remark. He laughed, not because he found it funny, but because he completely rejected the idea. He explained that the two men came from very different backgrounds and had built their careers through different experiences. When he committed to a project, he expected everyone involved to bring the same level of professionalism and accountability. By this point, the relationship appeared beyond repair. Then, in July 2021, Johnson made it official. He announced that he would not return to the main Fast and Furious franchise. He wished the cast and crew well, but made it clear that future installments would move forward without him. For many fans, it felt like the final chapter. The rivalry was over, the partnership was finished. Or so it seemed, just for months later. Vin Diesel made one last public attempt to bring Johnson back, and it would become one of the most talked about posts of the entire feud. In November 2021, only a few months after Johnson publicly announced he was done with the franchise, Vin Diesel made one final appeal. This time, he didn't call Johnson in private, he posted it on Instagram. Addressing him as *** my little brother Dwayne, ***, Diesel urged him to return for the final chapter of **Fast and Furious ***. He spoke about family, said his children still called Johnson Uncle Dwayne, and insisted that Hobbs was an essential part of the franchise's future. To many fans, the message seemed heartfelt. To others, it felt like another attempt to pressure Johnson in public. Johnson wasn't pleased. In an interview with CNN, he revealed that he had already told Diesel privately long before the Instagram post that he would not be returning. According to Johnson, his answer had been respectful but firm. He also expressed disappointment that Diesel had involved his children and the memory of Paul Walker in a public effort to change his mind. As far as Johnson was concerned, the conversation had already ended. But while the feud continued making headlines, another problem was quietly emerging. For years, The Rock had looked untouchable. Nearly every major film he starred in became a commercial success. That streak was about to change. In 2021, *Jungle Cruise*, co-starring Emily Blunt, struggled at the box office. Then came *Black Adam*, in 2022. The film had been one of Johnson's most ambitious passion projects. He spent years helping bring the character to the big screen and openly promoted it as a major turning point for DC. Financially, however, the film fell short of industry expectations. Its disappointing performance sparked widespread discussion not only about the movie itself, but also about Johnson's growing influence over the projects he starred in. Critics argued that many of his characters had started to feel too familiar. The unstoppable hero, the larger-than-life personality, the man who rarely appeared vulnerable, whether audiences agreed or not, the conversation had changed. For the first time in years, people weren't just questioning one movie. They were questioning the brand, and once that door opened, older criticisms quickly resurfaced. As criticism of *Black Adam* grew, the conversation around Dwayne Johnson began to expand far beyond the movie itself. Across social media and YouTube, people started revisiting older interviews and public appearances, questioning whether the image The Rock had carefully built over the years had become too polished to feel authentic. One topic that gained attention was his fitness routine. In past interviews, Johnson estimated that he consumed between *6,000 and 8,000 calories a day while training. Some fitness experts publicly questioned those numbers, arguing that they didn't align with his physique or lifestyle. Another long-running debate centered on whether Johnson's physique could be achieved naturally. Johnson has said he experimented with steroids briefly as a teenager and has denied ongoing use. Even so, the topic continued to fuel online speculation, with commentators offering conflicting opinions based on their own interpretations. Then there were the smaller moments. Fans noticed that Johnson had posted multiple times over several years describing his visit to In-N-Out Burger as if it were his first time. On its own, it was a minor detail, but to some viewers, it reinforced a broader perception that every story, every post, and every public appearance had become part of a carefully managed personal brand. Whether those criticisms were fair or not, they reflected something important. Public perception was changing. People were no longer just watching The Rock, they were analyzing him. Then, something unexpected happened. After years of public disagreement and repeated statements that he would not return, Johnson announced that Luke Hobbs would once again be part of the Fast and Furious universe. In a video shared with fans, he confirmed that he and Vin Diesel had resolved their differences and agreed to move forward. He explained that sometimes the future is bigger than personal disagreements. For some fans, it was the perfect ending. For others, it raised an uncomfortable question. Did The Rock return because old wounds had finally healed? Or because both sides recognized they were stronger together than apart? Only they know the real answer. But perhaps that's not the most important part of this story. The real lesson isn't about who won the feud or who was right. It's about the impossible challenge of living inside a brand you've spent decades creating. When the world expects you to be the strongest, the most disciplined, the most successful, there's almost no room left to simply be human. And maybe that's why this story resonated with so many people. Because behind two of Hollywood's biggest stars was a reminder that even carefully crafted legacies can be tested, not by failure alone, but by the pressure of trying to remain larger than life.